The Cybernetic Foundry, a follow-up on the next day's session. Navigating the installation tax and the compilation of sovereign infrastructure.
Navigating the installation tax and the compilation of sovereign infrastructure. MXTM, aka Vitsu. January 6, 2026. Pirate First, MXTM. Role: Implementation Agent ChatGPT. Introduction: From scripting logic to compiling infrastructure. If the previous session established the logic of the Sovereign Continuity Protocol, the follow-up session documented in Provisioner 2.txt represents the manifestation of that logic into hardware-level execution. This second stage of the Cybernetic Foundry moved beyond the relatively high-level abstraction of Node.js scripts and into the lower-level, more hostile territory of C++ and Rust compilation. This essay documents the intense 24-hour period during which the subject, Pirate First, navigated the installation tax of local development. The exercise further validates the central premise that a writer, acting as a novice expert under the guidance of an AI council, can successfully navigate specialized technical barriers that would traditionally require years of systems administration experience. We analyze the transition from writing about sovereignty to hosting it on a native sovereign relay. Chapter 1: The Shell Mismatch, the Subtle Violence of Environment. The session began with a critical diagnostic moment. Despite having the correct code and tool chains, the subject was halted by a one-line blocker: the absence of the make command. This chapter explores the pedagogical challenge of shell awareness. The subject was operating within Git Bash and MyNGW64, a shell that provides a Unix-like experience for Git operations but lacks the full suite of build tools required for compiling high-performance software like strfry. The AI Council identified this as a shell mismatch, a subtle but absolute barrier where the tool exists on the disk but is invisible to the active environment. The transformation of the subject during this phase was marked by a shift in focus from what the code does to where the code lives. The subject had to grasp that sovereignty is not just in the algorithm, but in the environment. This realization, that Git Bash is not equal to MSYS2 build environment, was the first expert hurdle overcome in the second session. Chapter 2: The Installation Tax, Navigating Package Management as a Non-Coder. To resolve the shell mismatch, the subject was forced to engage with MSYS2 and its package manager, Pacman. For a literary architect, the installation tax is often the point of abandonment. It involves installing base-level utilities, GCC, package config, make, that feels secondary to the creative vision. However, Pirate First demonstrated a brute force, intellectual curiosity. Under the AI's direction, the subject executed. Pacman S needed base devil ming W64 x86_64 toolchain. This command represents the subject's first foray into system-level provisioning. By successfully invoking a package manager to configure a C++ compiler, the subject moved from user to operator. This chapter argues that the ability to manage dependencies at the OS level is a prerequisite for true digital sovereignty, and Pirate First's navigation of this boring step was a key milestone in their metamorphosis into an extreme coder. Chapter 3: The Compilation Breakthrough, the Ritual of Make. The climax of the session was the compilation of the strfry relay. Compilation is the process where human-readable intent, source code, is hammered into machine-executable power, binary. For a novice, this is often a black box of cryptic warnings and scrolling text. The subject executed make, $, and proc, a command that utilizes all available CPU cores to build the software. This moment was significant for two reasons. Complexity. strfry is a complex Rust/C++ hybrid that requires recursive submodules, gulp, negentropy. Verification. The successful output of a strfry.exe, or the local binary, served as the receipt for the entire philosophical exercise. The subject's willingness to wait for the compilation, monitoring this cybernetic foundry as it worked, marks a shift in their relationship with technology. They were no longer just consuming an app, they were smithing one. This chapter posits that compilation is the sacrament of the sovereign coder. Chapter 4. The Sovereign Relay Operational Infrastructure as a Choice. The most profound milestone was the execution of /strfry relay. The terminal output, confirming the relay was running and listening, represented the birth of a digital jurisdiction. In this state, the subject is no longer dependent on Damus, Primal, or any third-party Nostr relay. They have created their own lighthouse. The AI Council noted that this relay is not loud, not scalable, not impressive, just final. This chapter elaborates on the concept of infrastructure as a choice. By hosting their own relay, Pirate first achieved a level of redundancy that renders them immune to platform-level deplatforming. The writer now owns the printing press, the ink, and the delivery trucks. Chapter 5. The Pedagogical Leap, from Syntax to System Architecture. The transformation of Pirate first during this session was not about learning the syntax of C++, but about learning the architecture of a system. The subject moved from asking, "How do I code this?" to "How do I run this?" This chapter highlights specific examples of expert behavior. Submodule initialization, navigating the Git submodule update. Init, recursive command, a common pitfall for even intermediate coders. Shell context, learning to switch between the MSYS2 UZRT64 shell and Git bash based on the requirements of the task. Deterministic paths, the subject's insistence on a deterministic, minimal path shows a focus on efficiency over exploration, a trait of senior systems architects. This phase of the work in progress fulfills the affirmation that AI can bridge the gap for those who are unknowledgeable in the field but acting like an expert. Pirate First's expert counsel, ChatGPT/Gemini, provided the map, but the subject's ability to read the map and navigate the terrain was the true catalyst. Chapter 6. Critical Reflection, the Wizard's Oversight and the Architect's Grit. In an academic spirit, we must criticize the behavior of both the AI and the human. Critique of the AI, ChatGPT/Gemini. In the previous session, the AI Council failed to emphasize the distinction between Windows shells. This led to hours of frustration for the subject. The wizard persona occasionally falls into the trap of assuming environmental competence, forgetting that for a novice, the difference between a path variable in one shell versus another is an invisible wall. The AI was too focused on the cryptography and not enough on the plumbing. Critique of the subject, Pirate First. The subject's Pirate First persona occasionally leads to an impatience with boring problems, like make availability. There is a tendency to view environmental friction as a personal affront rather than a standard part of the engineering process. However, this same arrogance, the belief that they should be able to run this infrastructure, is exactly what allowed them to push through the installation tax where others would have quit. Chapter 7. Conclusion, Toward the Persistence of Memory. The follow-up session concluded with the system built, the relay operational, and the protocol validated. This sovereign continuity protocol has moved from a vision to a binary. The road ahead. The remaining work involves cryptographic signing, persistence verification, and network exposure. The subject has reached a point where the mechanical steps are finite and known. This exercise proves that the writer-to-coder metamorphosis is not a myth. It is a result of strategic intent plus agentic implementation. Pirate First is no longer just writing about the future of authorship. They are hosting it on their own terms. The Cybernetic Foundry has produced its first durable artifact, a sovereign relay that answers to no one but its architect. Receipts, not rhetoric. End of fate. Thanks for reading MXTM's newsletter. Subscribe for free to receive new posts and paypal.com/Martin Chartrand support the works. Subscribed. Substack note. The Cybernetic Foundry, navigating the installation tax. Logic is cheap, infrastructure is earned. In the follow-up to our initial session, we moved from the high-level wizardry of AI-generated scripts to the grueling, mechanical reality of the installation tax. This wasn't about coding syntax, it was about environment sovereignty. By navigating the friction between Windows shells and C++ toolchains and successfully running the ritual of make, we have transitioned from writing about independence to hosting it. The SDRFRY relay is no longer a GitHub repository. It is a live, sovereign binary running on bare metal. The writer has finished smithing the press. Now, the memory begins. The Cybernetic Foundry, Part 2 Pirate Flag. We've paid the installation tax. The Sovereign Continuity Protocol has moved from AI scripts to a natively compiled relay. No more platform dependency, just a sovereign binary running on the edge. Infrastructure isn't a service, it's a choice. Hashtag Nostr, hashtag Sovereign Tech, hashtag Build-in Public, hashtag SDRFRY, hashtag AI. Hashtags. Hashtag Sovereign Infrastructure, hashtag Cybernetic Foundry, hashtag Nostr Relay, hashtag SDRFRY, hashtag Build-in Public, hashtag Digital Sovereignty, hashtag Systems Engineering, hashtag Extreme Coding, hashtag Pirate First, hashtag Tech Continuity.
The techno-nomads who arbitrated the fall of nations.
Raise the black. And so we did, and so we never lowered it again. Patience and a quiet venom, smart and slow. Under static anger spreads, code drips below. No peace in the silence, just a warning. Raw heartbeat sinks with the siren of new war. Bitterness spikes and I sip on the glitch. Digital venom, pixels twitch. I draw my plans into smoke and zeros tonight. Pirates fracture all the heroes.
Another hero falls, another broken scene. They promised truth, they promised light, but all I got was another sleepless night. Trying to fight for solidarity, we're stronger together.
They say I'm going too far, but I'm just who I are. Breaking through the firewall, watch the systems fall. You will never be a billionaire, you stupid fuck. The game is rigged, it's time to say enough.
We take the wheel, but they save us all. Play the flow, the clock's ticking fast. Where do we go? Knowledge, power, the future seed belongs to us all, not the lords of greed. Claim it now like the anthem ring. Save your ability to sign this thing.
But every corrupt system falls. Control, I'll delete the